we're double crop farmers. I could smell the burnt vegetation, killed the wheat crop, and it also killed UK basketball. So. Hey, today we're harvesting a little crop and we're going to talk about drilling wheat, a practice that's pretty common here on this farm and common here in our area of Kentucky. We're double crop farmers here in Kentucky. Our season's long enough that we can seed winter wheat in early and late October and into November, and then we harvest that wheat in June and replant soybeans, and we can get a full soybean crop off in the same season. So just makes your ground more efficient. You get two crops in one season, and it's a challenge logistically just to get everything done, but it can be very beneficial to the farm too, especially in a season where you get two full crops. So we use a John Deere 1990 air seeder. Basically what it is you have a central commodity tank that holds the wheat, and then it goes into a coulter style shank, and it's just basically metered out of the tank, sent through the air lines, and then placed in the ground with that coulter as the tractor seeds through the field. We generally shoot we like to no-till our wheat here. It just, for us, logistically, is we're short manpower, and it's very easy for us to just put a wheat drill in a cut cornfield and just go to town. And so it's hard to get a uniform seed depth in that scenario, so we try to have our shallowest seed around 1 inch, and it probably varies anywhere. At the deepest, you'll probably see 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches. With wheat seeding, it's more of a shotgun approach. You'll see a few on top in the fodder, some at 1 inch where we would really like to have it, some 1.25 inches, some all the way down at 1.5 inches. I hear, I think a lot of times where wheat is a single crop and where they can grow really high yielding wheat, they shoot for about 1.7 million seeded seeds per acre. In our no-till environment, we up the population. We seed around 2 million to 2.2 million plants per acre, and we're basically, because of all our fodder and some of just the rough seed bed that you're sowing into, you're going to get several seeds on top. So we find that the higher the population, generally we can achieve those higher yields that like in a better, more worked seed bed where you could cut it back to 1.7 million. We can't cut it back that far. Our yields go down when we go down that far in seeding rate. Generally, in October, generally here in Kentucky, our September is really dry, and then in October we'll start to get the fall cold fronts coming in. And this season, October's been fairly dry. Our cold fronts have been dry overall, other than a couple of hurricane or tropical storms, like the cold fronts. We hadn't had many cold fronts to begin with this October, but every cold front that we've had thus far has come in on dry air. So generally, though, the challenge here in Kentucky is in October, as we start to cool down and we're having cold fronts coming out of the west, a lot of times they're bringing precipitation, and that precipitation, this time of the year when the days get short, it takes longer for our soil to dry out, and so it just basically squashes your window into a few days a season where you can, best get the seed in place where you need it in optimum conditions. So I guess precipitation would be our number one challenge to get the wheat crop in timely. We prefer to seed into a really dry environment. We find that generally the corn stalks have decayed faster. We can get a more uniform seed depth when it's dry because the ground's uniformly dry, and it just allows us to get the drill set in basically the hardest spot in the field, and then it'll pretty well adequately seed everything else. If you can get the drill in the ground an inch in the hard spot, it'll get you a good uniform stand when the field's uniformly dry. So we like to seed into dry conditions. Most of the time we don't get to, and we just try to set the drill the best we can for areas of the field that may be a little bit wetter than they should be. So, but yes, we definitely prefer to sow wheat in dry conditions. Sow wheat in the dust or bends will bust. I find that's a pretty true statement. What I find with wheat is it's a pretty forgiving crop. So if as long as you are doing a decent job out there with the drill and not laying it all on top, you're more than likely going to get a pretty decent stand of wheat. So get some dirt on top of it, even if it's just a little bit. Generally the wheat will come up, and it'll also come up in really adverse conditions. It'll come up if it's too wet. A lot of times it'll come up if it's too dry. If it can just get like a tenth or two of precipitation, it can a lot of times survive and grow through with just a little bit of rainfall. So it doesn't have to have a lot, it just needs a little, and it's a pretty hardy crop. I think generally most every crop around here will make something. We've had one frost that I can think of in my career, and I always talk about this because as a UK fan, this was a difficult year in a UK fan's life. The year they hired Billy Gillespie, which was a total failure on the part of UK's athletics. The day they hired him, we had a killing frost here in Kentucky, and I want to say it was in mid-April, and it went down in West Tennessee too and killed a lot of their crops. But I was actually turkey hunting in Tennessee that morning, and we had planted the corn crop already. It was a really dry season, and the wheat crop looked absolutely beautiful. And they had let Tubby Smith go, and they had hired Billy Gillespie that morning. And I remember as soon as it cracked daylight in Obion County, Tennessee, I could smell the burnt vegetation because the frost was so severe, and it killed our corn crop and the West Tennessee corn crop, and it killed the wheat crop, and it also killed UK basketball. So the frost that killed it all. What it'll do is the plant won't actually die. It'll just kill. The plant will still produce what looks like a head. It just won't have a grain in it, or if it does, it'll have like maybe a little shriveled grain. I've heard that it'll damage. That there has been frost so bad that it won't even produce like what looks like a head. But that season, what happened to ours was it killed the plant's ability to produce a grain, but it still put on a head. The head just didn't have grain in it, and but what we did was when we realized it wasn't going to put on a viable head, we just sprayed it down and planted into it. So there wasn't no salvaging the corn though, either. I mean, it was we ended up having to just seed back into the cornfields, and it killed them. Just the corn was big at that point already because the season had been so warm and dry, and I think a few of the fields had to be sprayed off or worked up, but for the majority, it killed it so dead we could just plant back into it. We use a pair of 8R John Deere, so 8270R and 8285 30-foot seeders, so they don't pull very hard. Those tractors do really good jobs with them. The same ones we used to put on our 1790 bean seeders in the spring pull the air seeder in the fall. They've racked up quite the hour meters on both those tractors because they do so much of the seeding during the spring and fall. I want to say one's a 14 and one's a 17, and they got quite the hour meters. Last field of the season of wheat, and then everything else we see will be cover crop. every field's a little different. Like the field that we're currently working on today, it was a replant field of corn, and the corn had a heavy slug infestation, basically ate our corn. We ended up having to work the field and replant the corn, and then we had a 7-inch rainfall on the cornfield, and it caused erosion to happen because we had it worked up. And so what we're doing is we're repairing that erosion with tillage, tying the corn fodder into the wheat field, and then drilling wheat on top of it, and that'll prevent future erosion. And then we'll be back into the. We don't like to take anything out of no-till here in our area. That was just a situation where we didn't have a choice. We needed to get rid of what was left of the slugged out corn crop, and it left us vulnerable. We didn't need a rainfall to happen whenever we got it seeded, but hey, it's farming. You're going to have some. You don't ever want things like that to happen, but I've seen throughout my career that whenever you least need a rainfall like that is when it's most likely to happen. That's exactly what happened, and so we're repairing that, and then that wheat, will become a full crop. We'll wait until we harvest it to reseed the beans back into it, and then you'll have the wheat plumage plus the bean plumage next fall, tying it back together again, and we'll put a cover crop on top of that and seed corn into that cover crop the following season. So it'll be wheat and beans in 2025 and corn in 2026. So generally here in my area, West Kentucky, I would say year in and year out, June 9th would be our average starting date.
Okay.
And then generally we seed back into the wheat field that we cut the same day with soybeans. So if we start cutting wheat on the 9th, we'll start planting soybeans on the 9th. This year we had a really early wheat harvest. We started harvesting, I think, the 26th or 28th day of May. That's, I think, either the earliest or the second. I think it's the earliest I've ever planted soybeans and cut wheat in my career. Maybe one other time, maybe the drought of 2012. Somebody said, hey, we cut some wheat in May that year. Maybe we did. It's just been too long. I can't remember. But I know we don't generally get to cut wheat in May. That was just an anomaly. And I guess if this coming season stays as warm as it is currently, like we're sitting here in November and it's 82 degrees outside, or in late October, right before November, I guess, and it's 82 degrees outside, and we continue this weather pattern, we'll probably have another May crop. So, and today we're harvesting a double crop acre, so you can see out here in these soybeans the wheat stubble in the soybean field, and so that's what we're seeding wheat into today will be the same scenario. We'll be here next October harvesting that soybean that was on that wheat acre during the summertime. So thanks for watching our YouTube about wheat drilling. Like, share, and subscribe.